All right, we've got about 30 seconds before my timer that I'm staring at goes off, so we will be prompt. It's just weirdly quiet in here, and I just have to verbalize that. All righty, 5 o'clock. Hopefully that wasn't too loud for anyone. I need a motion to approve and accept this agenda without amendment.
Aaron, motion.
Yes. Motion.
All right, all in favor?
Yes.
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 I'm counting. All right, Pledge of Allegiance. Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm way impressed with our commitment to stand.
Hey, you got to set a good example, right? All right. I do not see any recognitions. Samantha has indicated we have some communications from the public. Samantha, what is I'm looking for my cheat sheet, which I don't see about, I think I got it. What's the best way to handle these, Samantha? Are there questions that you're just going to share, or?
I'm going to go ahead and unmute Andy in order that they speak, and then I believe is follow a normal process.
Okay. We will paraphrase our instructions for those who are participating in the communication from the public. Before you share, if you could state your name and your address, and then we limit our comments from the public that aren't on the agenda to 3 minutes, and just also that we cannot discuss personnel, and what's the other?
We can't ask questions.
Oh, that's right, because we're not on the agenda. We can't ask or answer questions, but we can try to connect you with someone who can at a later time.
All right. So the first request I had was from Lisa Swain Poole. Lisa, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your mic.
Great. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Swanepoel. I'm at 1896 Northwest 86th Way here in Ankeny. And first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for allowing the public to comment during your school board meetings. I know your time is valuable and you have a lot going on right now. So Friday afternoon, parents of senior students received a survey via email regarding the graduation ceremony options. The options that were offered, just in case you're not aware, there were 3 of them. The first one was May 23rd, an online video commencement. Option 2 was June 20th at Hilton Coliseum. However, should the government restrictions on gatherings not be lifted by this date, we would then set up a diploma pickup process from the buildings. And option 3, also on June 20th at either AHS or ACHS gymnasiums. 2 guests per student would be allowed due to space, which means siblings could not attend. And should the government restrictions on gatherings not be lifted by this date, we would then set up a diploma pickup process from the buildings as well. I'm sure many things were considered before these 3 options were presented, and I thank you so much for the time spent coming up with these ideas. However, as a parent of a senior student, I truly feel that we can do so much better on these options. These students have already been brilliant in navigating the emotions of missing so much of what should be the most memorable parts of senior year. No prom, no spring sports, uncertainty of what's expected in classes and how final grades and credits will turn out. And now having a choice between only one guaranteed ceremony option and possibly no ceremony at all. I know that schools in the metro are working really hard to come up with a plan. I saw Valley's plan. They actually have 4 dates set up at Valley Stadium with a 5th as a final backup plan of a virtual ceremony. So at this time, I would just like to respectfully request that these options be re-evaluated to add some or all of the following, maybe an additional backup date further into the summer, a possible outdoor location like our very own Ankeny Stadium where immediate family could line both sides of the field and proper social distancing could still take place. And finally, no matter what date and venue are chosen, I would love to see a virtual commencement as the final backup. I know, I can't imagine choosing June 20th on that survey, knowing that if we don't get the okay from Governor Reynolds to do that, that we're driving to the high school and picking up the diploma just from a building. That sounds crazy to me. It would be also be wonderful if whatever date and venue are chosen, that the ceremony be streamed online for our at-risk families to be able to attend virtually no matter what. Our students of this grade have had a motto they've carried with them since kindergarten, and that's that they have the perfect 2020 vision. And this is obviously not the 2020 vision they imagined. Some of this is obviously out of anyone's control, but what I want my kids to learn is to teach them how to control what we can control and how to make lemonade out of lemons. They deserve to be celebrated in the grandest way possible. And I know that there are parents and other citizens in the community that would love to assist with a proper send-off. So let us help give those seniors the ceremony they deserve. And I'd also like to ask that a follow-up to this maybe be added to the agenda for the next meeting, just so that we can know that this is being discussed and talked about. Thanks so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right, the second, sorry, I'm trying to find everyone in the list here. The second request I received was from Lea Hill, and Lea, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
All right, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. My name is Lea Hill, and my address is 3602 Southwest Edgewood Lane in Ankeny. I first off would like to thank Lisa. I think a lot of what she said I'm going to echo, and also to thank all of you. I know this has been probably a lot of extra meetings and time for all of you here in this last 6 weeks or so. Just a few words to say here. So my husband and I have 3 children in the district, and our middle child, one of our daughters, is a senior at AHS. As I'm sure you agree, students are the reason our schools exist, and they should be our school's #1 constituency. As such, we should be seeking to provide our graduating seniors with the most vibrant and complete graduation experience that our current circumstances allow. The plans that have been proposed thus far are lacking in some respects. As Lisa mentioned, seniors could end up without any ceremony at all under 2 of the proposed scenarios. Although it is exciting to think we could have the traditional ceremony at Hilton on June 20th, it's entirely possible that indoor events over 1,000 people will not be allowed at that point. If that happens, then both of the live options under consideration would be canceled and students would simply pick up their diplomas at the office and receive no recognition whatsoever. I think we can do better. Another option that Lisa mentioned also is possibly an outdoor ceremony at Northview Stadium. And as she mentioned, we could maintain proper social distancing and possibly have a couple of different alternate dates later on in the summer. And I do realize it's difficult to compare one district to another, but it's awfully hard not to compare as we see plans coming forth from other districts. In the various plans I've seen, there are no other schools in which students would be left without a ceremony at all. So at the very least, I think we owe these students a virtual ceremony if we are not able to gather in person. I think probably most of these young women and men have been thinking about their graduation for many, many years, and I'm sure none of them thought that they would be graduating in the midst of a pandemic. So the final thought I want to leave you with is just to ask a question. When these 800 plus seniors look back at their high school experience at the Ankeny School District, do you hope they look back with fondness and appreciation for all that was done to recognize them in this time of distress and panic? Or do you want them to look back with regret and sadness at missing out on so many of their senior experiences, including that final culminating graduation ceremony? So I'm just hoping that we as a district, as parents, as a community, can step up and show them that we care and we can be creative and diligent in coming up with some great solutions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leah.
All right. Last request we received was from Lydia Hill. And Lydia, I unmuted you just now.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hello, so yes, I'm Lydia Hill, and Leah Hill just spoke as my mom, and I'm a senior at AHS, and I live at 3602 Southwest Edgewood Lane. And I just wanted to be able to provide the student perspective for what has been going on for the past couple of months. So, over the past couple of months, students at Ankeny have sat back and waited for administrators to tell us what is going on amidst these confusing, frightening, and incomparable times. It is the expectation that necessary guidelines for learning are provided, as this is what is integral and expected in the school year. But what seems to have been forgotten is that graduation is also integral and expected in every school year. I don't exaggerate when I say it is infuriating to sit in my house, watching as the culmination of the majority of my life's work is decided by individuals who are far removed from the emotional ramifications of their decisions. While shaking a hand as I get my diploma and hugging my friends and teachers may be an experience I never get to have, it is insulting to be told that I may not be given the respect of a few words said over a conference call about my 13 years at Ankeny. It would be one thing if what Ankeny's administration had proposed was the norm across the metro and the state of Iowa, but this is not the case. To watch my friends from other towns be treated with kindness and empathy in regards to our circumstances make the choices and lack of backup options even more disheartening. I recognize that it is difficult and unfamiliar time for everyone, but unfamiliar times call for unfamiliar solutions. My peers and I deserve more than to pick up our diplomas uneventfully at the school. All I ask for is a little creativity and effort is put into the events that are to be the culmination of my childhood, and that is kept in the front of everyone's minds that Ankeny schools exist for their students and that their experiences are what people should be thinking of when difficult decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Samantha, was there anyone else who was in line?
That was all I received.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the updated COVID-19 plan. I need a motion and a second to approve it, and then we can ask any questions that people might have.
Motion. Second.
Okay. Bruce, do you have anything you want to share on that? Or if there's anyone else that was.
Yes, I think I'll go ahead and share a little bit. This is the last time this year that we'll ask you to approve this. And it's the third and final phase. And again, the reason that we're doing this is so that we can honor our agreements and pay people, and that we can maintain certain things that we have entered into. One of the things that is going to really people were wondering about, and there have been a number of questions, is the grading. And how are you going to grade when you haven't seen students? And so Darren Hawk has worked with the curriculum group, and they have worked very hard. If we were going to work with, if we had gone with our first answer, we probably wouldn't have come up with this. And that may be true with, same thing with graduation. And hopefully I get a chance to talk a little bit about that as well in my closing comments. So, but we have made some changes that weren't apparent to us at the beginning. The state has made some changes that has altered things such as special ed, and we'll have people speak to that. And so, Darren, if you want to go ahead and talk about basically what will continue, and then you or one of the people in the curriculum department can talk about the grading at the end, because I think we really started to think about the motivation of being on a voluntary plan and not having the option to improve or focus more on your grade. And so I'll let Darren explain that.
Good evening, everybody. So like Bruce indicated, we have had teams that have been working really since the initial closure, but especially since we had the governor's first extension, which took us from April 13th to April 30th, looking at how we can best provide educational opportunities and experiences for students during the closure. So on April 13th, you saw the first iteration of our voluntary educational enrichment opportunities. I'm going to call it the VO from here on out, just because it's a lot easier for me to say. But of the VO plan, which was implemented immediately after that board meeting on the 13th. We had teams of teachers and administrators then that immediately went back to work looking at that plan, looking at the implementation, looking at listening to the feedback that we had received from implementers, from the board, and looking at how we could improve that plan, not knowing exactly where we were going to be as far as ultimately if the governor was going to bring us back to school on May 1, or if we were going to have an extended closure. And so the focus of our conversation really that week of April 13th was what is going to be best for our system moving forward, to continue with the option that the state provided of the voluntary experiences, or to attempt to implement some required experiences. And so we had groups working at multiple different grade levels examining that problem, and ultimately those work groups recommended to the academic services team, and the academic services team recommended to cabinet, and you are seeing the results of that recommendation tonight, that our resources are best spent here in these last 5-6 weeks of school, really diving into how we're using those voluntary options, working with families and with students as much as possible. And so the plan for May 1 through the end of school has not changed fundamentally from what you saw on the 13th. We have, like I said, taken feedback and made some changes, mostly for clarity through there. And I'll speak to this in some broad ideas, and I'm going to ask a couple of folks from academic services to speak to this a little bit as well. But Basically, we have clarified roles as much as possible. We have especially focused on what it looks like for teachers to have office hours, which is an optional way for them to communicate with students beyond what they're doing for the whole classwork. The other big changes in the May 1 plan from the April 13th plan was that we separated out feedback and grading. We have some guidance from the state that has been coming through, continues to come through from the state as far as what we can do for grading and what we can do for feedback on the voluntary experiences. And so that is clearly defined. And I'll circle back and talk about grading here after we've gone through the whole plan. But I think it's important. I asked Nancy Lehman, who is our director of special education, to speak a little bit to what we have updated in this version of VO from the first version for our special education students and for the teachers and the expectations for them. So I'm going to ask Samantha to turn her into a presenter here real quick, and she'll speak to special education side of things.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me now? Thanks for letting me speak tonight. Just looking at the VEO, I wanted to share with you a couple of things. We are working as a special education team to continue to provide supplemental services and supports to our kids to the highest extent possible. We know that some of our students, some of the services that they receive aren't really replicable in a virtual environment. They're trying to reach out to families and see what is replicable, what's prioritized, and what's manageable and feasible and reasonable for families at this time and for students. The important first consideration is what supports and supplements do they need to access their core curriculum, and then for our more intensive friends, what's viable and what's feasible at this point virtually. Some of our more intense kiddos had a lot of associate support, and that's challenging to provide and keep health and safety as a priority for our families. So really working with those families and teachers to see what is reasonable. One piece of guidance that we've received early on was that we shouldn't be providing live synchronous learning for only identified populations of students, just because it could create a FERPA violation. And so we've been working with the attorneys and our special education directors network, and we'll be pushing out, hopefully at this week, a parent permission form that would allow students with disabilities to connect virtually with other students with this. Wasn't a violation. So just gaining some parental access and allowing that more synchronous learning opportunity versus asynchronous. So hoping to ramp that up and improve that a little bit. I would be very honest with you and say the guidance is changing day to day. And I'm hearing that there's more guidance coming Thursday from the Board of Education or from the Department of Education. So we're trying to rapid respond to the changing field. So I would like to take a moment to thank our special education teachers. They feel they're so valued and they work so hard, and they're not able to do what they do every day right now, and it's really hard for them. They don't feel like they're doing enough, and I appreciate every step that they're taking, every effort that they're making. They're worried when kids don't engage, when they don't hear back from them, and it's hard for me to be able. It's hard for them to hear. That's okay. You're doing what you're doing what you're intended to do. So again, it's not as rich as the IEP may be, because it's different. We're in a different time, but we really are trying to provide those supplemental services and supports that kids need to the best of our ability. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Aaron, it looks like he has a question.
Did you call on me?
Yeah.
Sorry, it beeped right as you said who it was.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Nancy, have you gotten a lot of feedback from concerned parents, and you feel like you're supported enough to kind of deal with that particular influx and managing through all the questions that individual families might have?
Yeah, I've had very limited input really from parents. Mostly, parents go to their roster teacher and their principals first, and then we get that with those teams, which is really helpful. Which is appropriate because I don't know every student. Through situations, there are some things that we can certainly adapt to and provide. We have to make sure that we're providing equitable services to all of our friends. So just making sure that we're considering access and equity and reasonability as our primary venues right now. I have a great connection and resource with our Metro Sped directors, with our attorneys, with our Heartland people, and they're helping navigate the tough and unforeseen waters right now. So I appreciate all that support.
Did anybody else have a question for Nancy? Oh, Ryan, looks like Ryan does.
All right, thank you. I was just reading on the plan and just kind of the expectations section for the general education teachers and the special education teachers on page 10 of 55. And, it seems like there's quite a difference between maybe the expectations that are outlined for special education teachers. Is that because of these guidelines, or is it, I guess one thing that really jumped out at me was one-on-one virtual interactions with students is outlined for special education teachers, and it's not outlined for general education teachers. And I'm just curious maybe what the difference is there, and how these specific expectations were, how we're identifying these for these specific groups of teachers.
Brian, were you on page 5 when you were reading that on the special education teachers part?
I'm sorry, I have 2 page numbers. One says page 5, one says page 10 of 55. So yes, but it is specifically at the bottom of that page, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we had a work team, a special education work team that helped to craft the bullets within this document. That included administrators and teachers and our special education coaches. One of the things that we were initially concerned about is there was a lot of interaction between a special education teacher and a special education student alone, where there were some reports of that, or teachers were sharing on that team that was happening in their building. And what we wanted to be able to do was outline that while we appreciate that, we want to make sure that we're using the same protections that now we're going to ask gen ed teachers to have in office hours. So just to make sure they're buddied up, that also opens the door for associates to participate in that one-to-one session if they're available and have access, friendly faces that the students may be familiar with and know, just to provide not protection in a bad way, but just think about the way that we normally do things in a school setting. We very rarely meet alone with children. There's a door open, a window open, people nearby, and just honoring those same things that we would do in a virtual environment, which, this is new for us. We don't really think about all those things. So just providing that clarity and guidance was the rationale behind that bullet.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Was there anyone else who had a question for Nancy? I'm not seeing any hands raised. I had a quick question, Nancy. When this first was all happening, there was some fuzziness or lack of clarity about like those services that the AEA specifically provides on their own, like speech therapy and things like that. Have those things kind of washed themselves through to have some better clarity? Or
yeah, I just met with the Heartland team today. So you're thinking about SP, PT, OT, all those different things. They are reaching out to families either through roster teachers or directly with families to see if there's services that they can provide. They shared today at the Heartland meeting that they're not hearing back a lot. There's some people that have said, sure, absolutely, let's continue practicing speech, for example, virtually, because that's something that's very doable. They're not, but their overwhelming feedback was they're not hearing back a lot. But they are willing to connect. So if you hear of a family that's wanting that connection, we can certainly make sure that they're hearing from each other and talking about what is doable. We won't be going into homes again, of course, but what can be done virtually and what can we provide?
So if an email maybe has gotten lost in the pile of emails that's been received, families can feel free to contact the person who worked with their children
Yes, absolutely.
and be able to maybe try to start some of those things up in a new way.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
One thing that I think everyone's very aware of is the amount of emails that parents are getting. And, you know, we want to connect and we want to continue to offer, but we don't want to flood and annoy either. So if there's something that is missing or you're hearing things from parents or you're hearing concerns, just please point them in the right direction and we'll work to navigate the situation the best that we can.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Nancy, I just have a quick question. I'm going to go back to that page 5 that Ryan was referencing, just the outlined expectations for special education teachers. The second and third bullet kind of specifically speak about what types of services that could be offered, you know, skill-based learning opportunities and then regular ongoing feedback, those two things. Is that intended to be like proactive, like the teacher should be reaching out to parents and offering that, or is it sort of more reactive? Like if a parent reached out and said, hey, this is what we're doing at home, can you help me figure out how to navigate this? Kind of what's the spirit of that?
So those were our first version too. So it's meant to be proactive. It's meant to think about the goal areas and especially specially designed instruction that's written in the IEP. And what are the ways that we can support that now? So when I think about, you know, for example, a reading goal, it's hard to replicate the full reading instruction that may have happened when school was in session. But what supplements and supports can we provide for the family for that student to continue to enhance those reading skills or work on fluency or practice comprehension or get feedback on those things? So it's really meant to be more proactive and aligned with aligned is a tough word, similar to the goal work that they may have been working on in their IEP. We, of course, are responding to parents as they have questions or needs and reacting to and thinking about different ways. There's often things about, well, we can't do this the way it's written in the IEP. And so it takes us a while to think about, so we can't do that, but what can we do? What will work? What's accessible? What works for the family? And sometimes what works for one family, one venue or platform doesn't work for another. So it's providing equitable resources and multiple delivery platforms that kids and parents can access. So really meant to be proactive and hope that kids engage and don't lose those skills as much as we can prevent between now and when we return.
Thank you.
All right, Darren, we'll throw it back to you. And
I was also going to invite Carol Eddy to speak to us really briefly tonight. Carol has been with a team that's been focusing on supports for students, maybe English language learners, students that we're concerned about getting the credits that they're going to need to graduate, students in the health program and that. And so I'd ask Carol to speak just a little bit to how the BEEO plan is going to work for those students and families.
How about now?
Now we got you.
Oh, there we go. Okay, that's perfect. All right. So as Darren mentioned, there's a couple things that I've been working on. One is really just trying to work on that equity of access piece for all of our special populations that are not considered special education. So that would be students with 504s, students that are part of our DOP matrix or dropout prevention are at risk students or at risk population, working with our EL population, and then also ELP. And just because those are all of our sort of specialized populations where we've got some specific teachers working with those groups. Once again, I'll shout out just the way that Nancy did about how wonderful those teachers have been to work with. And the biggest concern that they have is really just making sure that their students are engaged and that whatever we're providing to them is something that they have the ability to access from home. And so, yes, that sometimes that's Wi-Fi access, but for a lot of our students, it is this written in a language in which I can read? Is this written in a way that I can read it because my reading level is maybe lower than my typical peer would be? are the directions clear for me, because my executive skills or my executive functioning is a little lower than my peers. And so I may need someone to chunk that for me, or give me some sentence starters. And so really just working sort of with those 4 different groups of teachers to help craft not only the generalized things that you see in the VO document, but within the website that was created for teachers, there's even more specific guidance on, okay, how would we provide accommodations for 504 students in this time period? What kinds of communication do we need to have with our general education teachers? And what do I need to do as a person who monitors those 504s? And just really making sure that everybody has some clear lines of communication to make sure that we're accessing all of those students and making sure that they have that equitable access as well. One of the big things that we discussed as a group is really just I'll call it a documentation system. So a list of, here's all the kids from our building, who's made contact. Has someone out there reached that student? Are they engaging? Are they not? And just making sure that every student we have found, and that we know that they maybe they're not engaging, but it's out of choice, which is perfectly fine. Like if they, at this point, it's voluntary, and so if they're choosing not to, but what we don't want to have happen is have somebody out there who wants to engage in what we're doing and they can't for whatever reason. And so really just making sure that we've got a process in place for staff to identify those students, and then we've got a way to respond to any student who wants to access what's out there and just can't right now. So that's really what you see in that VO document, but also there's some continued guidance for very specific populations in that website too. And then the other component that I worked on was just some very specific grading guidance. We have a number of students that use a platform called Edgenuity, and it's an online platform for our at-risk students. It's usually used for credit recovery, but can also be used for initial credit depending on some specific qualifications for students, specifically those that are at Summit. But the biggest difference is students don't get usually a full schedule like a traditional student would at the beginning of the year. So when traditional grading says students will be graded on the work starting in January and ending in March, some of my students hadn't even started a course or had just started a course maybe 5 days before the end. And so limiting that to them would have been really difficult. So really just trying to replicate our grading system as best we could with those Edgenuity courses. So since students were in first semester, I'll say 45% of second semester, we've done the same thing with Edgenuity. So students will be able to receive credit through their Edgenuity classes when they've hit that 45% mark. So they've completed 45% of the course. And of course, they still need to make sure that they have that passing grade for that work as well. But just trying to make sure that that group of students is looked after as well. So that's really been part of my role, is just making sure that the guidance is clear, not only for Summit, but for any other student at our traditional high schools, as well as Southview and Northview, and have that guidance for how we would move forward with grading in our online platform as well.
Does anyone have questions for Carol? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Thank you, Carol. We'd been having some questions about wanting to hear from you and from Nancy. So thank you guys both very much for adding this clarity and this perspective to what we've been doing, because it's very, very important, definitely. Okay, go back to Darren.
All right, and I'll just wrap up here talking about grades, because that's been something that we've received a lot of questions on, and a great group of again, teachers and administrators came together to talk about what's the best thing that we can do for our students as far as honoring the work that they've done and reporting that in a fair way for them here for the second semester. And so we had some information go out to families today that explains this, but just to kind of summarize, in our kindergarten through fifth grade, third trimester marks will be not assessed or N in all content areas and specials. and they will not be assessed or given marks on their work habits. In 6th and 7th grade, the second semester grades will reflect students' achievement towards standards delivered between the beginning of the semester and our closing. Evidence that supports a passing grade during that time will receive a P, and evidence that doesn't support a passing grade will receive a no mark. And a no mark will be given for 4th quarter exploratory courses because those didn't start, and students will not be assessed on the work habits. And then for 8th through 12th grade, again, the grade will reflect their achievement on the standards from the beginning of the semester through the closure. A no mark will be given for 4th quarter exploratory courses for the 8th graders. The evidence for that first quarter of the semester, or first half of the semester, will be used to determine a letter grade, which then students would have the option to convert to a pass or a P. So if they had a D- or above, that pass will result in credit being awarded, but will not impact the GPA. If it was a D- or if it was lower than a D-, in other words, if they were failing, they will receive instead a no mark, which will result in no credit being awarded and will also have no impact on the GPA. Again, in our secondary or 8-12, they will not be assessed or given marks on the work habits. Obviously, the concurrent enrollment courses are slightly different, and I'm not going to go into the detail there because that hasn't changed really since the first week of our closure when we worked with the DMAC to partner on how those grades were going. So again, I appreciate Carol and Nancy sharing information tonight. If you have specific questions for me, I'd be happy to answer those as well.
Does anyone have questions for Darren? Okay, Ryan?
I don't really know how to frame this in a question. I guess I'm trying to put myself in a student's from a student's perspective, and I don't know, say I have a D and I would pass, but I decide to take a no mark, and I guess when I read the instructions, it is clear what those mean, but the unintended consequences aren't necessarily outlined. So I guess, and maybe it's just because I don't understand it, but I guess that's why I'm asking. So if I were a student getting a D and I was like, well, I don't want a D, I'm going to go for a no mark, or I'm going to go for pass fail. Does that mean that student then gets a no mark, or do they get a pass? And if they get a no mark, do they understand that they're going to have to take those credits again, or do they not have to take those credits again?
Sure. So again, the no mark would only be for situations where a student was not passing at closure. So if the student had an F, rather than having an F go on the transcript, which would impact GPA, considering the circumstances that we're under, that will go on as a no mark, which will not impact the GPA. However, they would not get that credit. So a student with a D in your example could either leave that D on the transcript, which would impact GPA, or they could opt to instead select the P for this semester, which would not impact GPA. In both cases, they would get the credit for that course towards graduation requirements. And so part of this process is that when we went over this guidance with administrators and how they're sharing this with teachers, is how important it is that they're communicating with students as to what evidence is needed, where the evidence would lead as far as a grade right now, and then also make sure that our school counselors are working with students who have questions as to what's the best choice for me, as far as what's going to help me on my transcript, as far as my future planning for college, career, military, wherever I'm going after high school. But that no mark would only be for students that would not have passed when the semester stopped on March 12th.
Thank you. So the communication of the availability of the counselors in particular, I'm sure the teachers are making sure that it's known that they're available, but for somebody like a counselor, how are we communicating the availability for those counselors?
So that is again, what we would like to have students do is start with their teachers communicating there, because the teacher's going to have the most information about the situation of that class. But the guidance is that we're going to encourage both students to reach out, but also if the teacher had a question about what would be best for a student that they're working with, to work through the counselors as well. So the counselors will be looking at the grade reports. They will be making contacts, much like Carol Eddy was discussing, with making those contacts with students that they're concerned about, and wanting to make sure that everybody has all the information they need to make the best decision for their situation as we get to the end of the semester.
With the counselor, there's a lot of strategy to it. As far having served that role, it would be, so Ryan, have you decided, even though that you really don't want the D, by getting a fourth year of a certain subject or a language, that means you're not going to have to take it in college, versus that of, if you decide to not take the mark and not get a credit, that means that you're going to get to take a world language in college, and the first week covers about if you've taken a world language in college or at the university level, the first week is about 3 weeks in high school. And people are dropping classes right and left before. It's one of, world languages are often dropped, and many students will tell you they wish they had stuck it out, just as an example. But a lot of it is you have to sit down and develop the strategy of what's going to serve you best under which university or which college, and also the scholarship game also enters into that.
But as long as they choose a grade or pass, they get that credit, and there's no worries about that.
Right. I mean, a lot of people think that everybody unweights the Ankeny High School's weighted grading, and that's simply not true. And so most people, the universities or the scholarships, they do ask for weighted and unweighted. But if they don't, then our students that have a weighted grade have a distinct advantage over those who don't, versus Chicago that has a weighted of 2.0 for a C is a 4 point. So you can see it just depends on the school and the weighting grades. So it's going to be a very strange time, especially this year coming into. I would not want to work in universities right now, because they're going to have, as our regents have said, they expect students in August. And so with that, those decisions will be made, and they go off an ROI score, and that's a combination of class rank and ACT. So.
I had a quick question for Darren if everybody else was. Ryan, did you get the clarity you needed? Okay, great. Darren, we had briefly talked at probably a couple previous meetings about no new grades can be assessed. But for those particular situations where there were students who had missing, incompletes on work that happened prior to the closure, so probably, yeah, like you said, March 12th, prior to spring break, was that ability to either make up or complete that previous work something that could have a tangible effect on that grade that somebody had probably particularly at the secondary level?
Right.
Like you may have had people who, as of March 12th, had incompletes on certain amount, and that is why they're receiving a D. That I know that the guidance on that kind of stuff is changing every day from the Department of Ed. Do we have an as of now guidance?
You're right. That guidance has changed, and I anticipate will continue to change, to be perfectly honest. But right now, what we're asking is that students do complete that work that was due prior to closure for feedback and grade. So if I was sick Thursday before spring break and missed that assessment, then I take that assessment and get that feedback and grade from that assessment.
So that as of now, that is something that is allowed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like I said,
not that I have a kid who would be in that situation at all, but hypothetically.
Like I said, the Department of Education has been updating their stance on a lot of the feedback and grades, and I anticipate that will continue. We'll of course keep you updated.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything else that you were, or any other people that were sharing, Darren?
I do not have anything else unless there are other questions.
Dr. Kimston had asked all of us if we had any questions about COVID-19 plan. So I sent 7 questions and we haven't touched 6 of those 7. So I'm thinking I'll wait until you guys answer them, or do I start asking them?
Bruce, what is your?
Start asking.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll start with some easy ones. We have a plan for students picking up their belongings where they can get everything out of their school without causing a big problem for having to clean and all that business.
Well, I wouldn't say it's not going to cause a big problem, but yes, in fact, Al Nepple has together a team, and I saw the first draft today, and this is really going to deep clean as far as the kids getting all of their stuff, and they're also going to be bagged, and have their name on it, and also medicines. We'll make sure that all of those go along. And again, we have great nurses and in some places secretaries that help us with that. So, but yes, we have a plan, and the plan crossed my desk today. To be honest, Jim, I haven't read through it, but it's Al put it together with his committee, so I think it occurs maybe even this week.
So they're like bagging every kid's belongings, some stranger or a custodian or somebody, and then people will pick them up somewhere?
It depends on the grade level.
Sure.
And so at the elementary level, and this, again, we're not at a place where this is finalized yet, so I'm going to be really general.
I get it.
But basically, as part of the teacher's process of cleaning the room, they're going to be able to separate what's a library book from what's a student book from what's a curricular book, and they will go through those student belongings and tag the student name on it. And then we'll set up a process for people to pick those up, much like they've picked up materials, food, the without being too specific, because I need to honor that team and their continued planning and their communication process on how to get that information out to the family. That's a general sense of how that will work.
So kind of dovetails one of my other questions was staff. I'm sure they want to get in their rooms and somehow put things away and for like the end of the year, and then you know, so that people can really get in and actually clean their room, because you know how that is at the end of every school year. We've all been there, done that. So that's going to happen first, and then the kids will get their stuff because teachers have to organize it. Would that be a fair assessment?
The teachers will also have a time to sign out, and you know, we'll have teachers moving as we always do, and usually we do the moving if they pack it. If it's valuable, we suggest they move it. And we have teachers that will move buildings and grade levels, and I would say in my 10 years, we kind of specialize, and I don't know how many people in a truck, but it's lots of trucks and it's lots of boxes, and they usually will number what room, and they get it into the metal.
So just to piggyback on that, so you'll eventually do some communication to parents about how to pick up all their kids' stuff, obviously.
Yeah, that just came today.
Yeah, we still have some work to do and communication plan to put out, but
Sure.
That's ready. We'll communicate.
So my next question would be, what's going to happen as far as next year's plan? Because we probably have two things that could happen. One is we start school on time, and what's the plan for catching all the kids up? They missed a quarter to a third of the year. So what's that plan? Or if we aren't able to go back, which I sure hope doesn't happen, I know all of us don't, what's our plan if we don't get to start at the beginning of the fall because we're still shut down? So I know that you've talked about working on preliminary plans. Have we done any more with that?
There'll be the state's asking, and is it July 1, Darren?
Correct.
Plans, the return plan, and essentially, will charge the curriculum department as well as administrators and principals all to engage in what that looks like. One is my favorite one, which is the first one that we're dreaming about, where everybody's healthy and goes back to school, and we might have a case or two of it. I don't think that will happen. I'm afraid. Just, and I don't even know why, Jim. I think that I'm curious to see the states that, including Iowa, that now are letting go of people and letting them do what, you know, go get a tattoo and then have lunch and go to the beach.
I won't be getting any tattoos, just so you know.
Okay. Or go to the farmer's market and maintain your 6-foot distance. But you're in the wrong county, so you can't do that one. The second one is that we have more than we would like. And so school will still be running, but we're going to have to figure out how to do two things at once. One, educate more kids than we would choose to. And I would say it would be something that we probably have seen before with H1N1 or some of these others. And then the third one would be like where you are right now. And I would say to the board that I feel an emphasis by the state, by the governor, by the Department of Ed to go to a required model, which maybe it's just me, but there are lots of things that have to be in place for us to do that. And so we have, and Darren and the curriculum instruction, academic services, they are working on different topics. And one of the topics is kind of the Grand Forks model. If you go to Grand Forks, South Dakota, you will see a pretty well laid out model of full distance learning, online learning, telling you how many minutes for each subject. And it's, and there are a number of states that have gone that direction. Some have experienced some success, others actually quit the year early and went home for the summer and are regrouping. So we are figuring out how to do that because my gray hair is telling me that I'm thinking that the required model may be required.
That kind of leads to my next question a little bit. Since we don't have a chief officer of academic services currently, will we be hiring one soon? And will that person be helping with the catching up and or the plan for the fall if we are not back at school?
Within 2 weeks.
My next question is, we have a bunch of elementary kids that are changing schools with the whole boundary change. Again, I know until we can not have to social distance, what kind of activities are planned for these kids that are transitioning to all these schools? Because when we did the boundary change, we had no idea this was coming. And so do we know what we're going to be doing to help those people transition to those schools? And obviously the new school and then kids switching to various other schools.
Jim, this is Melissa Schilling, and we're getting pretty close to going off the agenda. So I just want to be careful that we're not discussing topics that are too far off of the COVID plan that's been presented tonight.
All right.
So is that a question that you could ask Bruce? And I know you sent him an email. Maybe he hasn't had a chance to respond to your question, but or that, you know, at a later time, or that's something that could be unplaced on next week's agenda.
I can ask it next week. These are just questions I sent Bruce last Thursday, so I figured that they were open to do. Hello? I can ask it for next week.
Yeah, if we place an agenda item on the agenda.
Sounds great. Can I ask my next questions?
Yeah, just let's hear what the questions are, I guess.
So since we're all closed with COVID-19, are we doing anything to honor retiring staff?
Yeah, that's a good one. Your former employer, which I guess we are too. So one of your former employers, which you retired from the golf course. I don't know. I don't know if they're actually even going to be open. We've been checking on that. I don't look for that to be open. And so we're still up in the air. I mean, we obviously would like to celebrate with the staff. The other problem that we have is we're in a county that we can't have more than 10 people. The best, and I don't think that, unlike the graduation where they're willing to, in, July or wait,
Yep.
I don't see that happening. I could be wrong, but I think they're ready to move on to that next phase of life. And so I don't have a good answer for that, Jim.
So maybe we could just talk about it next week.
Okay.
And then my last question is, I think, a question that a lot of people already asked tonight is just what are our current plans for 2020 graduation? And obviously, we've had a little feedback on that today, but I sent that question to you last Thursday. And obviously, we put out 3 options for parents on Friday at 1 o'clock. And so with the feedback we're getting, obviously, we probably need to have more conversations about that and talk more about it next week or soon or whatever.
Well, I think there's one thing that I would say is I know that I have a staff that is willing, and I don't care if it's teachers, administrators, the board, they want to do what's right and give the class of 2020 an appropriate Ankeny graduation. As you know, I've been in almost every suburb in the area. Ankeny has one of the best graduations around. And so some of the things that people are willing to do, I think that the mistake maybe is that it came out more like a survey versus a poll. And basically, we were just kind of getting a feel for what the numbers were. And it's very evident through people's communication. I don't have anybody in my life that is not willing to add options or, I mean, they mentioned another school, which I know, which I used to work even, to just add a rain date on a football field. We can do that. Obviously we wanted to do the Hilton experience, and we don't know. So this is far from being done. We will talk about it again next week. We will look at other options as far as the alternate dates, ball fields. We also have to determine as a board, and when do you say it's kids are going to college or entering the armed services or going to work, when is that date?
Yeah. Probably one of the important things that I got from just the emails this week and the few people who gave feedback, I think there's a lot of parents out there that would be willing to do anything to help us. So we might want to tap into that too, along with our great staff.
Yeah, if they could control the weather and control uh, some uncontrollable things, but yeah, and we just may have to be, we just simply have to be more creative and figure out how to move two high schools on and off, and it's also for the parents. It's a celebration for the parents, and that's always my part of the speech, because they have been with their child for 13 years and the ups and downs. So I want to make sure that it's a great experience for them as well.
Well, that's, yeah, I think we all agree on that. So thanks. We'll just have to talk more about it. I appreciate your feedback.
Lori, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, DeShara.
I have a quick question. How are we currently using our social workers and counselors?
Who would be the best person to answer that? Darren? Okay. Go ahead, Darren.
All right. If you go back to the VEEO, I said I was going to call it VEO, but VEEO plan, and look at page 7, the specific guidelines for counselors and social workers are in that top row there. So for those that don't have that in front of them, it's to serve as a liaison for communication with students, families in crisis, actively reach out to families that have yet to connect with school, provide resources for students and families to support them while they are away from school, communicating with community resource organizations, address registration needs for next school year for guidance from the administration, continue communicating learning opportunities and resources aligned to mindsets, behaviors, and online learning formats that were utilized prior to school closure, participate in building level and/or specialized professional learning needs communicated to the principal.
Okay. My greater question was concerns about, and Bruce and I had talked about the number of abuse cases decreasing, and the ones that we knew of prior to school being released, there being a presence, just checking in, just following up, seeing how things are, so that those kids know that there's still someone present and keeping an eye open for them.
I'm going to ask Samantha to start up Jill Urich's microphone if she would. She works with our counseling team directly and can probably provide a more detailed answer than I can.
All right, Jill, I added you as a panelist, so you just have to unmute and or turn on your video.
Hear me?
Okay. I can. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I had an opportunity to collaborate with our social workers and our counselors, and DeShara, like you, they are thinking about their students and concern for their students, and really the social emotional being of them. So they are in many cases reaching out and checking with students or checking with parents, also collaborating with teachers if there are opportunities where teachers are virtually connecting with students through synchronous situations. I know the counselors and social workers are willing to hop on and interact with them as well.
Okay. All right, thank you, Jill.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has any COVID-related, plan-related questions?
Lori, can we have Scott Litchfield talk about food and also hearing about the last day? I'm hearing different things now about how long they're going to serve students?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a couple questions. I'll just tack them on at the end. Not a problem at all.
Hey, Lori, just to point something out, there was a good summary of the meals that have been served from each week in our board update that was pretty informative, that you can see it's gone up every week, which I guess didn't surprise me, but that was nice and I appreciate that being shared.
Great. Samantha, is Scott available to bring in?
I made you a panelist if you can unmute your mic.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Scott.
Absolutely. Yep. So yeah, like Jim said, I put Jennifer asked me to put kind of the numbers together of what we've been doing, where we started, and where we are. I can happily say today we didn't run out of meals anywhere. We actually had extra meals everywhere, so everybody that came through got something, and it's amazing. We did probably, well, I was just looking at my numbers. We had about 2,036 kids that we handed meals out for. So about just over 8,100 meals today. And about by 12:15, the lines were pretty much empty. So in about 15 to 20 minutes, the cars got through. The Northview addition was really nice. Definitely took some traffic off of East Elementary where Trilene's at. So that the police were very happy about that, and I think all the people that live around there were happy about that. So I think the numbers are steadying out, hopefully a little bit, but we'll continue to increase just a little bit to make sure we always have plenty. And the nice thing is where we're at now, we have production kitchens at all of those schools, so we have the ability to make a few more if there's people that we know there's going to be more kids coming through or more people coming through. Bruce asked me to talk about the end of the year. So I would love to keep serving through the summer, and we're working out plans as to how that may look. The difficulty, this whole program that we're doing right now is based off the summer food service program, which we currently do not participate in. And truly it's because it's based off of need. And Ankeny, as you all know, doesn't percentage-wise have a high need. That's not to say there's not a need there. It's just percentage-wise, there aren't huge pockets where that can happen. There are a few out there, which is where I started, and I put in my notes that you guys saw in your packets about why I chose East and Southeast to start with, just because the USDA, based on census data, has identified a few areas there. And once I realized that nobody was really walking up to our sites, I felt more comfortable moving to other schools, that everybody coming up is in cars. So anyway, it's based off the summer food service program. The USDA has made, I can't even count how many waivers to allow us to do what we're doing right now, which is wonderful. And they're supporting us financially to do this as well. Those waivers are set to expire at the end of the year. So they were put forward because it's an unexpected closure. The COVID-19 unexpected closure. Come summertime, that would not technically be an unexpected closure. We would expect to close in the summer. So currently the waivers are set to expire at the end of the year. With that said, I get emails constantly, and School Nutrition Association, Food and Nutrition Association are all pushing the USDA to extend these waivers at least till June 30th, if not farther. So there's a big press on them right now. So I don't have a lot more information. I've sent messages to our legislators, Grassley and Ernst, and our other representatives, asking them to put some pressure on to let us keep feeding, because we're obviously not the only district in this situation. So if the waivers stay in place, that makes it a little easier for us to keep going the way we are right now. If the waivers fall off, we can still do feeding. It's just going to be limited to a few areas. We're going to have to change what we're doing and actually take meals to certain areas, like a park somewhere. I don't know if you guys are aware of Love Lunches. I've had a lot of conversations with the churches in Ankeny, including the Love Lunch people, the people from Impact, and because they're nervous to feed as many kids as we are. They once upon a time said, we'll take over when summer starts, but they had no idea, and we didn't either, how big this was going to get. So I've been in contact with them, and they've been wonderful. They're offered their volunteerism every which way they can. So I think there will be a plan for summer. We'll figure something out one way or another. It's just right now, we're kind of in limbo waiting for the USDA to decide what they want us to do.
Scott, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, obviously, one of the great things about being a part of the free and reduced lunch program was that if your circumstances changed throughout the year, that could jump into that program during the year. There's a lot of people currently, because of the school closures and because of the pandemic, their job and money situations have drastically changed as well. Are those people able to be a part of like enrolling in the free and reduced because now they would qualify because they've been laid off, they've lost their jobs, and would that then, I say positively affect, but increase our percentage of those people that we serve in a way that might allow us to qualify for more things as a district from the USDA?
So the answer is yes, they can still apply. Anyone can still apply. I ran the numbers the last board meeting you had. I was just listening to the conversation and ran some numbers. We'd have to qualify about 4,000 more students to get in that percentage range. They have dropped the percentage from 50 to 40%, but we'd still have to qualify a lot of students to get to that range. Not to say that that's not happening. Here's the one thing for this year. Obviously, since we're not serving school meals and anybody can come through our lines and get meals for their kids, qualifying really doesn't do them any good for this year because it is a lunch program, and that's it. The one thing it would do, looking to next year, is that anybody that qualifies this year, 30 school days into next year, they would automatically qualify for those benefits as well.
Okay.
So that's the one thing that's in my mind, that if people did apply this year, and they can apply up through June 30th. So I think as we go along here and kind of see how things are going to go and what things look like, and if things open up and look better, they don't look better and things aren't looking good, then pushing out to people, hey, if you need it, go out and qualify for this free and reduced program, because it will last till, I don't know the exact date, but it's like October. If we start on the 23rd of August or 24th, it'll be, I don't know, like October 1st is the 30th school day or something, or October 2nd. So
okay,
that would be the one thing about, I don't think percentage wise we could probably get where we need.
Scott, maybe it'd be good to push that out, because I would guess a lot of parents just haven't thought of that, or maybe just putting it out there so people know, oh yeah, I can still do that. And that might relieve some stress for people that don't have jobs.
This is something that is, I don't want to say a secret, but it's a fact that is not well known, that this extension has to be made, and it's not being pushed as hard as probably it could be. And so I'm just saying to the board, we know what's happening here. And I know through my superintendent group, most of us do not qualify, even when we add our new people. And so there are going to be a lot of people in the Des Moines Metro that will not qualify, with the exception of Des Moines Public.
Does anyone have questions for Scott?
That was my question, was how did meals go today? I just wanted to thank Scott. I appreciated being able to see those numbers. It's very clear that this grew at an exponential rate very quickly. And so I'm just really appreciative of you and your staff being able to respond and make this available to our community. You're just serving a tremendous amount of people. So thank you for all the work that you and your staff have done.
Yeah, and I would say, my staff, I appreciate that, Katie, and I just want to give total kudos to my staff, because they have all stepped up to the plate and just gone above and beyond. it didn't matter. They were emailing and saying, how can we do? What can we do? When can we be there? And I would also say the community and teachers, and you name the person in Ankeny, have reached out to me saying, how can we help? What can we do? Can we help hand out meals? We'll do anything. So I've thanked everybody and said, right now we're in a good spot to be able to do it. And so I appreciate the kudos because my team has done a nice job. They've really gone above.
Ryan, did you have something?
I was just curious if it would be appropriate for Scott to pass along the email that he sent to our federal legislators. I'd love to be another voice and echo the request for the extension. I just don't know the words to use.
Absolutely. That would be fantastic. Scott, is that something that you would be okay doing, or at least giving us the data that we need to send something out?
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. Thank you.
I'm not seeing anyone else. Scott, thank you so much for coming in on this, because that's been a big concern of ours, making sure our students are, just the logistics of taking care of them. And we're so thankful that you guys have done everything that you have in this. So share our thanks with your people as well from us.
I will do that. Thank you for all your support. Appreciate it, guys.
Awesome. Bruce, is now okay for me to just ask a couple of the COVID related questions?
That's it.
Awesome. Darren, is he still? Yep, he's there. You had spoke earlier that part of the building safety and the personal belongings of the students, getting those handed back and returned to people. Is there anything in that dynamic about how students who have school property, whether it's a book from their teacher's library or something like that in their homes, how that gets returned to school? Or is that something that is on that list of things that Mr. Neville's committee is working on?
Yeah, that is part of that whole process. And again, to be somewhat general, because we're not all the way through that process, we are going to err on the side of safety more than getting that stuff back ASAP for most of it. So if it can wait until later in the summer to find a way to get it back, and hopefully things are in a better place, we'll probably wait. And except for seniors, that'll be the one group where we're going to have to find a way to get some drop-offs happening to get things a little bit earlier. But for most of our students, we can wait a little while and keep everybody safer.
So the accumulation of cafeteria spoons that yearly happens in my house, Scott will forgive me if I return them late.
I can't speak for Scott, but I'm going to say, yeah, I hope so, yes.
Okay, and then the COVID-19 plan that we got as part of our agenda, it's wonderful. And as I was reading through my email from the district today, the link to the entire COVID-19 plan that we are approving tonight that link was in the email sent out to all Ankeny school families, correct? Is that, I haven't checked yet, so forgive me. Is that link also on the district website?
I would have to ask Samantha.
It will be after this meeting.
Once we approve it, that makes sense. You can say that out loud. I understand. Okay, thank you. Because it's, maybe not everybody can print out the, 30 some pages of it, but it is really helpful for just anybody to have on hand because it answers so many great questions. Are there any more information or questions that people need? Oh, okay, go ahead, Ryan.
Just out of curiosity, was it considered as part of this plan to require maybe the upper level grades rather than making everything voluntary? I know I read through the considerations and the challenges that were considered. I just was curious, were those considered as a whole, or were they also considered for specific upper level grades?
Absolutely. The answer is yes, they were considered at different grade bands, and we also tasked those work groups with considering what it would look like for our entire system. And those work groups are not done with their work because, as Bruce alluded to earlier, we still need to be planning forward for what next year or 5 years from now, whenever something were to happen, how we're going to be prepared for that. But we examined all the evidence, we listened to stakeholders, and like we've said so many times tonight, arrived with the plan that we believe is going to be the most benefit to the most students, the best that we could do given the circumstances.
Thank you. My last question was, sorry, Lori. So
Now forever hold your peace.
Yep, exactly. I know there's a lot of new things happening because of everything going digital, and just being a part of the digital world in my job, I know a lot of different trainings and a lot of different knowledge exists for specific digital engagement topics. So I was curious to know if that was a thought as far as helping the staff of the district understand the differences between digital engagement versus one-on-one engagement. Has that been considered, or is that part of the plan already?
It is. That is part of the professional learning that you see referenced in several different spots in the VO plan. And again, obviously, that's an area where we as a whole system will have to continue to engage in intensity.
Cool. Thanks. I knew the words were there. I just didn't understand them.
All right. Since we have motioned and seconded, I need a vote to approve this updated COVID-19 plan as presented. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Yes for me. All right, opposed? All right, thank you, everyone, very much for this discussion. We appreciated it. Next item is contracts and agreements, the Time Clock Plus renewal. Need a motion to approve the contracts and agreements as presented.
Motion.
Second.
Did you get the second? All right, does anyone have questions on the Time Clock Plus renewal?
What is it? What's the Clock Plus, and what do they do?
Sorry,
Yeah.
that's funny.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Time Clock Plus is just what it sounds like. It's our electronic time clock that we utilize in all of our buildings. So all of our hourly staff and our substitutes clock in through the time clock. And then we use that software to bring a file over into our payroll software to calculate payroll. So Time Clock Plus came to us a few months ago and let us know that the current on-premise solution that we have with them, they're going to be basically phasing out, and they are going to a cloud solution. So this was, I ran that past Brad Johnson in IT, and he's very supportive of that. And it shouldn't change really anything as far as how we do business. It actually will make the software more available to administrators who need to approve time cards and things like that. They can do that off premise, whereas now they have to be in the district network to do those things. And they were very good about working with us on the price of renewal so that it was virtually no increase for this first year. And if you're with your technology background, you're probably aware that when you go to a cloud solution, you're sometimes seeing, a larger increase for that service. So we were very pleased with their discounted rate on the hardware side of our agreement to make the overall cost very comparable to what we had last year.
Jennifer and I, if I can ask, were we kind of mid-cycle in our contract with them that it?
No, actually we are right at the time where we would renew. May 1st would be our renewal period.
Okay.
They kind of came to us and said May 31st, they wanted to have us completely migrated over to the cloud. And I said, well, let's jump on a month early so that we can make that align to our agreement year. So no, we're right in time to renew right now.
Okay. And how long is our contract, I guess, with them?
It's just year to
It's
year.
year by year?
annually.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Did anyone else have any questions on that? Nope. Okay, great. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Okay, yes. Opposed? All right, thank you. We have no new business. Board member reports. I'm just going to start at the top of my grid here and work my way around. Aaron, do you have anything?
Sure. One comment and one, I guess, well, they're both comments. The first one, I mentioned to somebody recently, one of the things I love the most about serving on the board is shaking hands of the graduates as they cross the platform. To me, it represents the pinnacle of what we do and why we do it, and the culmination of that. And even the sweaty palm, hands that come by, I just love watching their faces light up and the nervous anticipation. And in a lot of ways, I hope we can do something in person, and probably not going to get to shake hands this year, but maybe elbow bumps or whatever. I have to sympathize. Having had 3 kids graduate and a junior, I fully recognize and appreciate that graduation is an important piece to that, as it's one of my favorite parts of actually being a board member. The other comment I'll make is something to pass along as to the right folk. So whether it's Bruce or someone that might be listening, in terms of some of the other things that are falling through the cracks, perhaps because we're so focused on the curriculum and the delivery and making sure that students are well taken care of as much as we can. But I saw an email today regarding a fee and some of those things that are getting lost under the shuffle. I can tell you from our family's personal experience, there's a few fees or charges, questions that maybe haven't been fully addressed as well. And some of that's extracurricular stuff, some of that's curricular stuff, and whether it's our ADs and or our building principals, just making sure we're shoring up some of those other loose ends for our families out there that, especially if things are tight, and there's resources they can get, figure out how to fulfill that. So that's just my comment. That's all I have.
Thank you, Aaron. Amy. Oh, Amy, you're muted.
Just want to say, similar to what I said last week, just thank everyone from A to Z for everything they're doing. It's kind of like that game where you're trying to hit the mole and you hit one mole and another one pops up out of another hole and you try to hit that one. That's where we are right now.
Screen looks like too.
Hopefully we can walk away with that big giant stuffed teddy bear because we got all the moles, but we'll keep pushing. And to those seniors out there, you're absolutely right. If Ankeny is going to be who Ankeny is, we need to think outside the box and we need to come up with something great. And I know we're capable of that. So I will work hard to put my head together with anyone and try to come up with something for your graduation, because you deserve it. And so I will keep fighting for that. I just want everyone to know that. And I want to thank all of my fellow board members for all of our work, and just keep plugging along.
Thank you. Jim?
Just a little shout out to Lydia Hill, who spoke today. She was one of my former students. She did a good job.
Shameless.
Shameless, totally shameless.
Okay, Katie.
I don't have anything really. Just want to thank everybody again for all the work they're doing in district and reiterate the messages about graduation. And I look forward to being able to have that as a discussion topic next week. So just, thank families who've communicated with us and people who spoke tonight. And we just appreciate everybody who's putting work in and providing feedback. So thank you.
Right. Ryan?
I just thanks for all the extra presenters today. I know it's difficult, or probably takes a lot of extra time to put together your thoughts and present to us. So thank you so much for that. I personally, I really love hearing from the people that are in it and making it and doing that stuff, and so it's really great. And then I just want to comment. I can't believe how many people are watching the school board meeting. I mean, it's really not a lot. I mean, you think about 100 in comparison to, we have over 12,000 kids in the district, but I mean, compared to 0 in the boardroom, it's exponentially larger. So I'm just super excited about that, and just hope that we can continue providing something like that even after this.
Great. Deshara?
Ditto everything they just said. Everything, all of it.
I love it. Okay. I just had a couple things. I was able to digitally attend a legislative and legal policy conference put on by the IASB this week on equity and how equity matters. And it was when that conference was initially put out months and months ago, nobody knew this was happening. But it was great to just hear how school board professionals and teachers and just board members and everyone were working so hard to make sure that in this whole process that equity, whether it's, there were topics on special education equity, racial diversity and equity of culture. And it was just a wonderful conference to be a part of, even though I maybe had to drive around and find some public Wi-Fi to access it because my Wi-Fi at my home is taxed right now. But I do believe they recorded it. So I think board members can log into the IASB website and access that conference, but it was wonderful. And one of my favorite days of the year was for the past, this would have been the 3rd year, was our Fill the Fund Day. That was not able to happen this year because of the pandemic and the quarantine and just all the things happening right now. But our fuel fund, while it's not happening right now, it's that fund that makes sure that we are able to provide kids lunches who might be negative in their lunch balance. And it helps us help those families and help those students always make sure that they have access to a meal, which right now we have our grab and go lunches, which is wonderful. But that fund will still need filling every part of the school year next year. And I've had some people reach out to me about, couldn't have our Fill the Fund Day. How can we help? Families so just a couple quick things, families who still have access, who have students that had money left over or positive balances in their lunch accounts, they can still go into the district website under the nutrition services. They can donate that money to the fuel fund. People from the community can still send checks to our fuel fund. And all of this kind of helps, like what Aaron had said earlier, and what Scott had mentioned. There might be some families next fall that are still feeling the effects of all of this and might need a little extra help, who may not be in that free and reduced lunch category yet. And so I would just encourage anybody and everybody to, if they're looking for a place to tangibly help students, that fuel fund is still there and it will still need people. And it's one of my favorite things. And that is, for the board members that are out there and the parents of the students, I'm sorry, I get emotional. This is me, this is what I do. I also have a senior who graduates this year. And so I can't believe I'm doing this, but I do.
It's okay, Lori. It's a hard time.
Yeah. But just for the families and the community to know that we do really take this very seriously for our students, for our kids. Whatever conversation you've been having at home with your senior, I promise I've been having at home with mine. Sorry. But we're going to do the best we can, and we're going to make this we're going to make it happen the best we can. And we're going to show our kids and our families that we can do hard things and we can make hard decisions, and we can adapt and we can grow and we can make it happen. So I have complete faith in our staff and our principals and our students that we're going to do what needs to be done the best way that we can. It's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be what was, more than likely, but we're going to figure it out. We'll get the answers, and just keep giving us and just the whole situation patience and grace, even though it's really hard to do right now, because everybody wants, we want to know. My kid wants to know. Lydia was a great voice to share for students. You know, we understand that they want to know too. And if we had a way to give them that answer today, we would have. And so I just want to thank everybody for their, just like all the other board members said, you know, just thank everybody for doing the hard work and for putting in the time and putting in the effort that this takes right now. And on that, once again, emotional note, I'll pass it off to Bruce.
I can't follow that.
I feel the feels. I can't help it.
I have nothing.
Well then, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Have a second?
Sure.
I'll go first. Okay. Okay. All in favor of adjourning?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, guys. Adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Dang it.